Chris, how did you know that it was time to come to Atlanta and build this team in Atlanta?
When you're out of work sometimes, you start to look around you to see what are opportunities that can help grow something that you're passionate about. I've always believed in Atlanta, and ever since they came on board 11 years ago, I thought this is a team that really could do some special things. And every team acquiesces and has good times and bad times. And I was around at the right time for Atlanta. So I was thrilled at the opportunity to sit and talk with Mary and Kelly about an opportunity to come here. They engaged with me and were very open to saying, hey, let's sit down and see what we can do together. So I'm very excited, and really, quite honestly, not really about me. It's really about what Coach has done, the players in this community supporting this team, and that's the most important thing. And I'd love to see Atlanta grow to the success that we all believe that they can be, and that's what's the exciting challenge for me.
Second row to your right.
Brandon Leak, SportsX here in Atlanta. Congratulations to you both. For Chris, Coach talked about it. Your thoughts on her getting the buy-in, not just from some of the players, but many players and many star players. And for you, Coach, how satisfying is it that you wanted to come in, be a defensive coach, and to get defense from your players your very first year on the job?
Ladies first. Well, I knew that we certainly had the right kind of players to be good defensively. I knew we had really athletic, really long, really lean. We added that even in free agency. We added good defensive players. So we knew in building and wanting to win sooner rather than later that it was going to be easier to get it done on the defensive side than the offensive side. And so, you know, we just hung our hat on that. We talked a lot about it. We put a base defense in training camp. And you know, it won us games early. When we were faltering at the bottom of the WNBA standings offensively, we were still hovering at 500. And we were doing it because we were competing at the defensive end of the floor. And I told them after every game, win or lose, that when we figured out the offensive side of the ball, we were going to be pretty fun to watch. You know, and when that happened, when that light came on, then you saw the balance that we had from that point forward.
I think as it relates to buy-in, I was fortunate enough to meet Nicki when she was in Connecticut. We worked together, and when Kurt brought her in as an assistant, he said, listen, you know, this is a very special woman. She could coach anywhere as the head coach. She's going to come coach with us. And so I was able to watch her grow and interact with the players in Connecticut. She was on the top of my list when we spoke with Mary and Kelly about who I thought should come in here. And we obviously spoke with a lot of people. We did our due diligence. But seeing how the way she interacted with the team in Connecticut, how she led timeouts, how the players responded to her, all those things were very easy to see and assess to say, wow, this is a very special person that could really do what we need here. And it's all about culture, quite honestly. And for us, it was about changing culture. That was what we talked about from day one, is how do we change culture? And it has to start at the top, which is Nicki. And when she interacts with the players and she engages with them, and just, I think the players really just all really enjoy who she is as a person, not only as a coach, but she's always positive, always ready to go. And again, she deserves every accolade that she gets. She deserves it. She worked hard for it. And I think that the team really buys into that. And it's hard to say no when you have someone that really believes in you and trusts in what you can do to contribute to the team.
Front row to your right.
Terrell Thomas, These Urban Times. Coach, it's kind of a two-part question right here. One, when will you actually have an opportunity to kind of soak it in? You know, WNBA Coach of the Year, AP Coach of the Year, but as you mentioned momentarily ago, you know, your focus right now is on Game 2. So when will you actually take the time to sit back and, you know, look at all the accolades? And then secondly, can you elaborate on how important it was to get a great coaching staff to help you out and get your philosophy in order?
Yeah. I don't know when I'll think about this. You know, I hope when we have more hardware, to be honest. But, you know, we've got a long ways to go before that point. So, you know, I don't know, maybe sitting on a beach with my kids, you know, when we had to take an October break. You know, you don't go into it as a coach. It's always going to be about your players. And it's just how you think. It's about your staff. And so when you talk about staff, I took a long time, really long time. And I talked to a lot of people and spent a lot of hours on the phone because I knew what my relationship was like with Kurt Miller and Carl Semesko and how we were able to challenge each other. And so I spent a lot of time communicating with different people to get that same feel, you know, and I knew Mike Peterson was more an offensive mind, and could really help on that side of the ball. You know, Darius knows the toughness of South Carolina and Don Staley, and I coached against him when I was at Arkansas, and so both of those two just kind of fit me personality-wise, you know, in terms of what they would bring to the table, and so felt really, really lucky that both were excited about the opportunity to come here, and I should say, you know, they probably were my first yeses before the players.
Thank you.
We have 3 more questions. We're going to stay on the right side here.
Coach and Chris, talk about expectations coming into the season. I guess if you listen to noise in the preseason, this team wasn't even supposed to make the playoffs, and you sit here in the WNBA semifinals. So just talk about both of your expectations coming in to the season.
Well, I can point back to a conversation I had with Todd DeMoss at the league office in February. The first schedule had come out. I called Teresa and said if I jumped off a building that night, she would know why. You know, and I'm sure every WNBA head coach felt that way, same way, because of how tough the schedule was for everyone. But I remember talking to Todd and kind of asking and begging for a couple changes. And one of the things I told him that day was I thought we were going to be pretty good, and that I thought we were even going to be better 24 hours later, and that's when Breland officially signed with us. So I knew we had the potential to be really good. I mean, I knew we had good pieces, but you never know how they're all going to come together. And you're bringing back a 2-time Olympian, and you're trying to mesh someone who, in like a Brittany Sykes, who took 20 shots a game and was an all-rookie player, and suddenly has a different role coming off the bench and different expectations. So we knew it was going to take them all buying into team before self, and that by doing that, they could probably personally have great seasons. So, you know, I knew we had a chance to be really good, but you never know how it's going to come together. You never know how injuries are going to come into play and things like that. So we absolutely knew we had the pieces, but it still was a building block to making them all work together.
What she said. I think we were well positioned, which is ultimately the goal. I don't think any coach or GM goes into a season thinking that they're not going to be good. You put the right pieces in place and you buy into a system. And again, I can't give enough credit to Nicki and the coaching staff to put that system in place and play the games. And getting through the first half of the season was, I think, everybody feeling out one another. And then getting to the second half, the goal was win the second half of the season. And we did a heck of a job at 15-2, so it worked.
Nicki, Chris, second row in the center.
Mitch Northam from High Post Hoops. Chris, we just heard about some of the kind of roster moves that you guys made to kind of bring this team all together. I think about a month ago, you all re-signed Tiffany Hayes to an extension. Why was it important to do that kind of mid-season and keep her here for the long term, and how has she helped you establish the culture that you all just talked about here?
Tiffany is very important to this organization and certainly to Nicki and the coaching staff. She's an amazing player. We all know that. We feel that she's the best two-way player in the league guard. Our situation is that we had 6 guaranteed contracts, and we already had a core out with Angel, so we could not core her. But again, because of what's happening here on the floor in Atlanta, she's very excited to stay here and be here. So it was important for us to sign her now, get through the season in the off season without having to worry about her. But she was really excited, and I believe Nicki told the story on television a few weeks back that we sat down with her and we said, listen, we want to sign you. And it was Nicki, myself, and Tiffany. And we said, look, do you think about this, do whatever you want to do? And she's like, well, you want me to tell you now? And we're like, sure, tell us. She's like, of course I'm staying. You know, we just jumped up, high-fived, we all hugged, it was great. I mean, we love her. We love every player on this team and this roster, and we're just really excited because we think that the foundation has been built for success in the future, which is what you want to do, and we're just really excited about not only this year, but building for the future success.
Chris and Nicki to your left.
Question for both of you. Start with you, Chris. I know it's Team Atlanta right now, but you have 3 of the 4 coaches you had a hand in the city.
Well, I have a lot of respect for everybody that I've worked with, and Mike Thibault's the winningest coach in WNBA history, and we worked together for 10 years, and he's done an amazing job. I mean, you can't say anything bad about Mike. He's our opponent tonight. You know, I wish him the best, of course, but obviously our objective is to come out here and win. Kurt, we had a great year together as well. Great individual, someone not unlike Nicki. I mean, he had been a head coach before, but not in the WNBA. He'd been an assistant in LA. and we've had a great rapport. He's been very supportive of what we were doing. He let me steal Nicki, which is a plus. So that all worked out well, so I'll like him forever for that. So I'm just really excited, but ultimately our objective is, as much as I love the other coaches I work with, we have one coach that I need to focus on right now, which is this person right here sitting next to me, and our objective is to win it all, and I think that we have the best coach in place to do that, not only for this year, but going forward.
What do you think? No. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. In June, Sykes came up to me, and those of you that have been around her know she's got a whole lot of personality and a whole lot of tattoos. And she said to me, "Coach, when we win you Coach of the Year, you need to get another tattoo." And I just laughed and said, "Okay, great," you know? And so, did I think that I would be sitting here as Coach of the Year right now? Absolutely not at that point. But I also was really proud of where we were at. And I think during that stretch, I think, you know, I've said this to the media before, that I think the fact that we never lost more than 2 games in a row kept us always headed in the right direction. We never lost the momentum or felt like we can't get over the hump, or we don't know what we're doing, or if, quite frankly, they didn't necessarily think I knew what I was doing. You know, you get into those losing streaks and it's really hard to get out of them. So by finding ways to win games, you know, when we were shooting 38% from the field and winning games, you know, kind of kept us on track to moving in the direction that we needed to go. You know, and then you get a couple games and it's amazing. We all know that it's more confidence-based sometimes than skill-based. And when you have a couple great games and things go the way you want them to go, that feeling that kind of goes through, you know, and courses through them, and the synergy that then they feel playing together, that all came together. And then all of a sudden it became, okay, who's going to beat us, as opposed to figuring out necessarily how to win. So, you know, I think the energy changed on the team and the belief in themselves. I think they knew they could be good, but once they saw it kind of come to fruition and score of 100 points at Washington and beat Seattle, I think those things were really big moments for us.
Row two to your right.
Tori McElhaney with The Athletic. Coach, I know there's still a lot of games left to be played. There's a lot of basketball left, but looking at day one, where you guys are now, what hope and excitement does that give you for the future of this franchise?
Well, I know Chris talked about it already a little bit, but you know, in re-signing Tiffany Hayes, it makes our off season just all about, you know, as a coaching staff, you never stop thinking about the future. And when you look out at your roster, and you have to look in our league with the cap, you look out 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, you always have to feel like you have a balance to your roster. And so, you know, I think it was important for us, and we feel really good about how we're balanced going into the future, so that we can really in the off season concentrate on, you know, as a staff, we're already in, hey, when we start training camp next year, these are things we want to start with next year. I mean, that's just constantly happening because now you have a feel for what you've already have, and then maybe you're just adding a piece through the draft, or you're adding a piece through free agency, but your core is there. So you know your starting point. You know, our biggest question is, how soon will Angel be back? You know, when it comes to what's our off season look like, that's probably our biggest question. How will she recover? How quickly will she get through rehab? You know, and we'll play that out. But, you know, we just feel really good about the position we're in terms of our roster and the future here.
And thank you, Chris and Nicki. Thank you and congratulations. That will conclude our press conference.